All right, so I suppose we're ready to begin. Let's get into introductions. My name is Charles Yu. I'm the founder and CEO of VoxPop Games. In the upper right corner over there, that's my partner, Marc.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for having us. A big shout out to the SaturdayCon team. Like Charles had mentioned, I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer at VoxPop Games. And just going to hand it off to Ian.
Hi, my name's Ian Masters. Hello from London in the UK. It's 6:50. It says my microphone's turned off. Okay.
Oh, it's back. It's back on. It's back
Okay.
on.
Yeah, founder and CEO of FLICK Games. We make a solitaire game, which is the last thing I ever thought I'd be doing after 22 years making games. But it's awesome, and we did a brilliant collaboration with Saturday AM with a deck featuring all of their amazing characters.
All right. Awesome. So I guess this is like a free-form panel. So I know that the moderators on both the Shindig app and YouTube are fielding questions, but let's go, I guess, into the Wild West and talk a little bit about what VoxPop is doing, what FLICK is doing. I don't know, Ian, did you want to do a sort of, I mean, we could go age before beauty, or how would we want to play it?
Well, the panel is about the future of independent games, so I suppose we could start there.
Awesome.
And while we get into how we fit into that picture, I suppose the most obvious place to start will be the increasing number of game design tools that are being made available, right? And the increasing amount of money that's been put behind advertising those tools. When it comes to SDKs like the Unreal Engine or the Unity Engine, or even simplified visual scripting tools like Game Maker, the fact that these tools have become so much more common is, I think, a very obvious starting point commentators always begin at when it comes to talking about how there are going to be more games and more game makers moving in the future. And I think a secondary component of that, though, right, the next obvious question is, well, why is there so much more money being put behind these SDKs and these products? And the answer is people are just becoming increasingly game literate. Games aren't a niche hobby anymore. People who grew up playing games now have kids who are going to be growing up playing games. I'm sure Marc can talk at length about that.
Yeah. My kid wants to play Halo Infinite in these floors, so that shows you where we're at as a society.
And that tells you more than anything how games have become mainstream, and making video games has sort of gained a glamour in the public eye the same way that making movies has. Or, obviously anybody who's been in game design can tell you it's perhaps not as glamorous, the reality, but even so, there's renewed game literacy, extra game making tools, and because of COVID, a lot of extra time to pick up new skills and try new things, right?
Oops, so sorry to interrupt. I was supposed to be moderating this. I don't know what happened backstage.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you.
How's it going, everyone? I heard you guys doing such a good job. I was like, did they even need me?
No, we did the facto, Mike. We did the facto.
I appreciate it. It was so good. It was so good.
I was like, I told everybody backstage, I was like, I think Michael was supposed to be in this, but okay. So whatever.
It's cool. Okay, we'll get back. We'll get back. So my name is Michael Beaumont. I go by Monitor Comics online. I am published with Saturday AM. I also make comic making tutorials on YouTube. We just hit 40,000 subscribers today. So thank you everyone for the support. I want to thank these three amazing gentlemen for coming out to SaturdayCon today, and thank the amazing chat for being here. Hopefully you're all having a great time today.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, yeah, we're having a great time. It's been fantastic so far.
Awesome.
Only a modest amount of panel.
So my first question was, I wanted you to introduce yourselves and talk about the company a little bit, but I think you guys already kind of handled that a little bit.
Sort of. We didn't go into the full gist of it. We just did minor intros.
Please take it away now that I'm here.
Charles, go for it, bro.
Well, as I was saying, right, more and more people are getting into game design than ever. But if you have ambitions of becoming a game designer, you're going to hit the same realization I did a few years ago. And that is how the hell am I going to promote any of my games? You're competing with every piece of media that's ever existed. You have no advertising dollars up front. And unless you have an existing brand, you probably don't really have that existing online audience either, right? You know, Dream Daddy had Game Grumps, but your game just has you, right? So the goal previously, 10 years ago, would have been to hand out free copies of your game to as many YouTubers as possible and just hope that they would play your game in front of their audience. But these days, with ad revenue sources closing and these sorts of sponsorships becoming more and more important, we're really beyond the time where influencers are generally willing to play your game for free, right? Because they're trying to keep their channels afloat and they're busy trying to do it for a living, right? So our solution is to try and link these two sides of the ecosystem. VoxPop is a profit-sharing games distribution platform. And what that means is every single game has a developer reserved percentage for user incentives. Anybody that helps that game get sold, for example, through recommendations, they get to claim that percentage of the revenue for themselves, right? And more importantly, you can give specific percentages to specific users. So you could walk up to a streamer and say, hey, listen, I'm giving most people 5% of my game per sale, right? But I'll give you 20%, 30% if you take my game and play it in front of your audience, right? And how do these recommendations happen? Every user has a link. You can put that link anywhere. You would put a Ko-fi or a Patreon. And anybody who goes to that link, they can see all the games you're recommending, and they can pick up those games to support you. The fact that there are default percentages means that influencers do not need to have a specific deal in place to engage with the platform. And but the fact that developers can assign specific percentages means that they can negotiate these sorts of deals. And that's how streamers can plug gaps in their sponsorship schedule. At the end of the day, what we're hoping to do is just make sure that all these new indie devs have an avenue available to plug their games, and that streamers get to take the value they deserve as well in what they create.
I'm a little zoned out because I'm checking out all the comments that are going on YouTube, so I'm just trying to feel different things. But that's pretty much the gist of it. Michael, we have a whole bunch of awesome anime, manga-style titles that are also on the platform on the storefront. But I want to give Ian some time to shine for Flick and see what they're doing there.
Yeah, like I said, well, I've been making video games for 22 years. I started making console games for PlayStation 1 and then FIFA. And kind of been doing mobile for a long time since 2003. I've worked on like Sonic the Hedgehog games on mobile, Loco Roco on mobile, Pop Idol X Factor, things like that. So I've been around a long time, and so yeah, the last thing I thought I'd be doing was making a solitaire game, but it's most solitaire games out there are the same 30-year-old version of Microsoft Solitaire, and they're intentionally kind of very, very kind of vanilla clones of that. So we've made something really fresh and tactile. And then the other kind of unique thing about what we do is we commission diverse independent artists around the world to create beautiful decks of cards. So we've commissioned, I think I was writing a contract for one of the new artists on Friday, and realized it was the 30th artist that we've commissioned in the last 18 months, 2 years, 18 months, which is pretty phenomenal. We try to do a lot to support diverse artists as well, and that is really about reaching out to different communities and seeing who we can find. It's one of my big beliefs with that is that actually it's not about quality. We if you look at the art that we have, it's incredible, but it's about kind of opening the funnel as wide as possible to attract as many people, so you can find good good artists, really. So yeah, I could talk much more about that. I'm equally happy to answer questions about my experience in the games industry so far. I've founded a couple of games companies, raised some funding for them. I know a lot about mobile and monetization on that. Trying to make a successful game is incredibly difficult, and it's the games at the top that make 90% of the money. So it's really interesting to hear what you guys are doing at VoxPop, and how you can help smaller developers get some attention that they very much need.
That's amazing. Thank you all for being here. That's really like inspirational hearing, coming from like an indie creator myself. So the fact that you're like supporting the art community and the indie community is really inspiring. So I guess starting things off, the first question I have is, how would somebody get into the game industry? So place yourself tomorrow, you're doing everything over again. What would you do to get into this industry that you're in right now?
So, sorry. There's only one thing to do, which is just start making games. There's no magic thing to do. You've just got to learn it, get on with it, make stuff. It's there's in the UK there's a lot of degrees for game design and games production and development and things like that. And most games companies care. If you get a good degree, then it will get you an interview. But most games companies care very little about qualifications, and they care that you can actually make stuff and you have practical skills. So the best thing you can do is just start making things, fail, get things wrong, make mistakes, learn from them, do game jams with other people, kind of trying to figure out where your skills fit into a team.
I feel like when people ask this question, they're mostly asking about the AAA games industry, in which case Marc can definitely handle the answers to that side of the question. But in terms of how to get started as an independent game designer, the first thing I want to point out is sort of the reality that most independent game designers that are operating solo or in small teams will not be able to make a stable living doing their job. That's what we're trying to change. That's what VoxPop here is here to try and change. But right now, overwhelming likelihood is you're not going to be the next Marcus Parson, right? You're not going to be the next Toby Fox, most likely. And so I would advise against anyone to gamble everything on becoming an independent game designer. I would not want to dissuade anybody from making their passion project, working on something that's meaningful to them, right? But it's unrealistic to dream that you're going to be a billionaire off of your next game, right? That being said, when it comes to where to get started specifically, if you have no programming experience, I would recommend getting started with a visual scripting program like Game Maker, right? The most important part about making video games, in my mind, is not the technical skills necessary to do it at a professional level, but sort of fundamentals about game design, about level design, and about how you string that flow together. If you do not have the basics of programming skills, which I feel like is what most people are lacking, the best place to get started is with visual scripting programs.
My sort of answer is like a long form, but I'll try and keep it as short as possible. If you're an artist, continue with the passion. There's enough tools that if you're a halfway decent artist, you can create a phenomenal styled game. My journey into game development happened over 17 years ago, and it's also something that I could give advice to. Look for entertainment jobs in the industry. Start from quality assurance jobs or Joe jobs or interning. I happened to apply to a job listing for Rockstar Games here in Manhattan at the New York headquarters. I got the job. I beat out 200 other people because I wasn't your normal game dev. I was a philosophy graduate from a state school that studied computer science and knew enough to code, but knew more about the philosophical dealings with what games do for people in general. So thinking outside the box is another thing. I know everyone likes to talk about, let me make a pitch to a publisher, let me make a game design doc, let me make a budgeted game that's going to be the next, like Charles mentioned, the next Minecraft. But we want things, the current environment that we have right now is as such. Everyone has enough time to make their passion projects their fruition projects. There's enough skilled animators and development tools and development, distribution houses like ourselves that you should be able to make these artworks come to fruition in a styling that is unlike what happened 15 years ago. That's an ancient times now. So thinking outside the box is a very key thing for game developers nowadays.
I want to issue a small caveat to what I said earlier. The word independent, I can't tell how wide my camera lens is.
You're in there with the quotes, bro.
The word independent covers a dramatically huge amount of ground because it can technically mean anyone who any entity that self-publishes, right? When I was talking about independent development, I was thinking of mostly solo auteurs, right? I'm thinking people like, Derek Yu or Daisuke Amaya or Zoe Quinn, right? People who mostly make their games on their own. But they're also indie studios, right? And you can make a very stable living working in an indie studio. Getting into an indie studio is not that different from getting into a AAA game studio, except sometimes their experience requirements are a little lower. It'll look like applying to any other job, in which case the answer is to apply to as many as possible. One of the guests you're going to feature, right, is LILITH Games, and they're literally the third biggest game company in China after NetEase, right? If they can be considered indie, CD Projekt Red can be considered indie when they have literally hundreds of $1 million in budget, then applying to those jobs, as you can imagine, is pretty similar to applying to any other job. I was talking about working solo, right? Working solo, it can be a bit rough. It can be a little unpredictable. And you do need a lot of passion because you will be doing a lot of that yourself. However, it's not like it's hopeless. Most people who make games solo, they do it in their free time because they got a day job, right? And their day job might be making games. It might be unrelated, but it's not like you can't make those games. It's just that you don't want to gamble everything on those games. That's all.
Thank you for your answers. That's actually really fascinating because from the art community, it's sort of a similar standpoint where some people always ask me, do you need art school or like a higher education to be an artist? When most people can just do it on their own time or at home or using free services like YouTube to learn how to do art. So with game development, I assume it's in the same boat where you don't need college or a higher education. You can just teach yourself and most of these skills. So
absolutely.
We're a few. I was just going to say we're a few months away from them issuing YouTube like academia accreditations for learning how to do something. Everyone's being taught virtually. The dawn of remote learning is upon us. I mean, it's been with us forever, but the pandemic just exacerbated the fact that there is a need, and there is differential between in-house learning. In a classroom, everyone still needs that sort of sociability, but there is going to be a bigger uptake with higher learning and higher accreditation degrees with doing remote and giving your theses online in panel situations like this. So don't discount that of virtual learning, specifically for game design, art design, game development, mobile development, PC development, because all of that stuff is incredibly viable right now.
I'm going to give you my honest opinion, which may not be the consensus opinion, but this is my honest opinion. Higher degrees, right? College, it's not there to teach you how to do things. It's there to provide a piece of paper you can show to an employer and say, look, I have dedicated time to doing this thing. Because if you think about this from the hiring manager's perspective, right? Yeah, obviously, on YouTube, through your own effort, you can learn to do something as well as any college graduate. Like sometimes
even better.
Sometimes even better, right?
Yeah.
But the hiring manager doesn't know that. They have no way to gauge your dedication to this craft, your level of skill, how much background knowledge you have coming up to this point. Obviously, not every college grad is going to be as good as people who learn stuff on YouTube, but that's not the real reason you want a degree. The real reason you want a degree is for whoever's hiring you, right? It's so they can say, this person, at the very least, cares enough about this field to dedicate 4 years of their life to earning this sheet of paper, right? That's what it's for. So from that viewpoint, when we use that view to look at the games industry, the idea of a T-shaped higher education for game design is actually very recent. I mean, DigiPen's been out here for like 30 years, but when it comes to other major universities picking it up, right? Like, Stanford, NYU, these major universities providing game design educations, that was like in the last 5-6 years. Sorry, no, more like the last 10 years, right? So prior to that, what game companies would have been looking for would be degrees that are related to the specific position that you want. Are they looking for engineers? Great. They're looking for a comp sci degree. Are they looking for people who can do 3D modeling? Great. They're looking for someone with an animation degree, right? They're not looking for someone with a specific game design degree. But now, with the rise of T-shaped games higher education, this may change moving forward. I think we're still at a point where, at the larger studios especially, they might value people with a specialized education over someone with a general education. But this may very well change moving forward in the future.
Thank you for adding all that. That added a lot more context. And I don't think it was the non-consensus opinion. I thought that was a very insightful opinion. So thank you for that.
I don't know what the consensus opinion is.
We'll probably hear from that towards the end with the questions.
Sorry.
No, go on.
If you're an artist, then do sign up to some game jams. There's always going to be teams who want art. It's a good way to just get some practice, over a few days, a week, however long the jam runs, and get your art in a game and start building a portfolio. And an art portfolio out of games is also incredibly important. Build it on Behance or Instagram or wherever that is. And to me as an employer and who's commissioned a lot of artists, that's more important than any degree.
Thank you. So can you give us a walkthrough of your process of what your everyday looks like as a developer?
There's as founder of a small company, there's no everyday. Everyday is completely different. There's some really crappy jobs that we have to do as well as the fun stuff of designing things and creating things. I don't know. I wouldn't know where to start. It could be absolutely anything. What about you guys?
So Marc and I don't make games currently, right? We're running VoxPop. We can certainly answer that question if you'd like us to still, or Marc can tell you about his time with Rockstar.
Yeah, or it's so besides the time at Rockstar, it's more about any game developer that's running a different business. So we're distribution, and we're working with independent creatives, artists, game designers, influencers, and content creators. So if we're going along those lines, we have to communicate with the entire community, the entire creative community. So if we're going into the spectrum of game design and development, Ian would know that, hand over fist. So would Charles, so would I. If we want to talk about our day-to-day at VoxPop, we're just trying to communicate with as many like-minded individuals as possible, as many creatives as possible. People that want to do Let's Plays or want to discuss how games can be revolutionary or games can be designed in a specific way to engage more players. A big example of this is we saw the sort of huge uptick in games like Mafia-style games like Among Us and stuff like that. So that coming from an indie studio with a revolution of the online perceptions from what happened during the lockdown and COVID and not being able to socialize properly, we can talk about how that creative process can grow out of a system like working with a distribution house like our platform. So we're trying to build the next evolution of not viralized games, but games that have a specific inertia or a movement within themselves. VoxPop is more of a tool set or a movement rather than a generalized storefront. You can use the tools on Epic, or you can use the tools on everywhere, but what we're trying to actually change is the dynamic within people to just say, okay, I'm going to build a game for 7 years and then launch it on Steam and then automatically sell it for 25% off and short sell myself and give away my property. We're trying to work within the means of these creatives have spent so much time and so much effort to build out their passion projects. And we want to shed light and enhance the voice. VoxPop means voice of the people. So we're trying to enhance the voice of these creatives. Go, Charles.
In regards to our daily schedule, though.
Oh, no, I didn't want to talk about Scrum.
I'm sure Marc will agree. When you're an executive in a small company like ours is, very small, 5 people, right? Like 4.5, really. When you're the CEO or a COO in a very small startup, your job is literally every job that you haven't hired somebody else to do yet. Because you got to pull overtime because nobody else wants to. So do you have a hiring manager? No, you're the hiring manager.
That's me.
Manager? No, you're the community manager. You
That's
have a lawyer,
Holly.
you have an accountant who's handling your taxes, who's, who even like when the company started, who's doing the engineering work, who's managing all that. We have to. It has to be us. And then realistically, we weren't trained to do most of those things. I didn't know anything about accounting or tax law before I decided to try and start a company. So realistically, half of the rest of your time, your off time, when you're not theoretically not working, is actually spent frantically researching how to do any of these jobs that you don't have someone else to do yet.
And also staying up to the trends of what's happening.
This is how I know you can learn to do something very well using YouTube, because that's what all we're doing. That's what we're doing every single day.
Whoa. There's also other means, but no. Like Charles mentioned, and Ian knows this all well. Ian started a bunch of different small tier, smaller companies. He's an entrepreneur like ourselves. You have to wear every kind of hat. You have to try and stay up with the trends. My off time is, like we said, 4.5 people. My 4-year-old is the half. So he's playing VoxPop Games. He's playing Halo Infinite. He's playing all of these different things that that are trending. And he likes not to say that I guess the content is a little bit more every friendly than your everyday shooter on VoxPop. We cater towards art house, lo-fi, sort of vaporwavy style games to III style games. So we run the gamut of all the content, and the creators that we have that are playing the games for their TikToks or playing the games for their YouTube streams have their variety streamers as well. One day they'll be doing horror, the next day they'll be doing puzzlers, the next day they'll be. So we have to encompass. It's an all-encompassing, inclusive community that we're trying to build and that we've already been growing on. And we want to make sure that on a day-to-day basis, we're enhancing the voices of every single creator and every single community member that has a positive voice. Even the negative voice is good for feedback, honestly. Taking a negative troll comment and turning it into something that becomes a feature in our platform has happened, and works with like what I did with Rockstar and Capcom and Perfect World. You take the comments that could be trolly, but there's some genuine feedback there. You got to just unwrap the morsel and use that to build better and to build specific to that sort of request. So a lot of these troll comments are requests. So you got to adhere to all the voices.
We are so proud of what our small team has managed to accomplish. Much more than other teams that are huge and bloated and never quite get there.
I just have to say, Charles, that as the moderator, I didn't think it would be appropriate, but as you were speaking, I was so close to just starting to like throw my hand in the air and cheer, because I'm a university student right now for the art program. And in the art world, I'm sure many other comic artists could probably relate to this, that comic art on like a scale of what artists sometimes believe is true art is usually towards the bottom tier of like the art world. So what most people in the art community like know about comic art is we are the writers, the directors, the marketers. We have to know about like screenplay. We have to know directing and like coloring and like all these different skill sets. We're putting on all these different hats to be a comic artist. So I was just like, speak about it. Moving on to more of a fun question, I guess. I guess to be a creator, you also have to be a fan yourself. So growing up or even currently, are there any games that you're playing that you want to talk about led to any inspirations or that like, you know, motivate you to keep doing what you're doing?
So many. Just so many. Today I was playing Metroid Dread, which is
the year, man. That's game of the year. Come on.
Yeah, so good. But I play all kinds of games, and you know, I think one thing is when you've been playing games for a long time, you're looking for something that's different, and you know, it's rare that a first-person shooter will hook me in anymore because I've played so many. Although Deathloop was bloody amazing, but you know, the thing this last week I really got obsessed with Wordle, which you know half of the planet has, I think. And I am so annoyed I didn't invent that game. It is just so obvious. But such a beautiful game design. But yeah, so many different kinds of games. I'll over to you guys.
I'm disappointed to hear Solitaire wasn't one of them.
Yeah, you had
that's a hobby. That's not a game. That's a lifetime hobby.
That's a lot. Yeah, exactly. That's like the life force energy.
All joking aside, in terms of indie games, the game that really inspired me to start thinking about games as more than just like a toy, like actually a medium of communication, was this free Flash game called Every Day the Same Dream. It's the kind of game version of what most people might consider a pretentious art film, but it was very great because it was clever in the way that it used game mechanical conventions to trick the player into doing the same thing every loop. And the game was all about finding ways to break that loop that might seem actually fairly intuitive to somebody who doesn't play side-scrolling video games, right? One of the ways you break the loop is by moving left. And this is going to shock you, but I didn't think to move left on the third screen for like the first 4 loops that I played, because in side scrollers, you always go to the right and you interact with everything when you move to the right? So, but I realized that if you weren't somebody who played a lot of side scrollers, that might actually be the first thing you tried, right? And so Every Day the Same Dream was the first game that made me think about the sort of language that video games use to communicate objectives to the player and how they were non-verbally communicated to me. That even though there was no text box that said, interact with this thing, you know, move in this direction, I just assumed that I had to, right? And that's why I really wanted to think about video games as some kind of narrative medium. And it is more impactful, I think, than film, because, in my opinion, because you actually have to do it. You're literally doing it. That level of interactivity creates a participation in the player that is meaningful, even when everything else in the game is straightforward, right? Like, so think about Papers, Please, for example, right? Actually pretty straightforward mechanically, but the fact that you are participating in this authoritarian system, that level of interactivity is what gives it the emotional gravitas that it has, right? It wouldn't work as a film. It's too straightforward for that. Right?
I have a comic booky answer, and a lot of the stuff has to do with. So Charles is very into the narrative, I guess, voice and communication methodology of interactive media. That's what gaming is. For me, it's always been about the high art. I'm an art nerd junkie. Anything that has flashy colors and crazy design is my go-to. I can't do it on my own. My hands are like, you know, damn these hooks, but I can't really do anything with them. So I love amazing cinematic experiences, not so much like the Marvel style games, but I also like, you know, lo-fi, low poly sort of meme style games. Anyone that knows me knows this story, and I'm going to tell it. Again, for those that don't, the only reason I got my job at Rockstar was two things: the main game that I mentioned as my favorite game, and Lance Williams. Lance Williams saw what I wrote in my sort of one-page dissertation on the fly of why this game is important in my life and why it drives me for game development. And it's Super Punch-Out for the Super Nintendo. That's all it is. The key art in that, the animation sets for that, the sort of weird stereotypical stuff that wouldn't fly right now with the enemy sets, the music, the fact that it's a hidden pattern or music game that no one really knows, has trended for me throughout time. So another key game for me in the shooter space is 13. It's built from a French comic book with David Duchovny phoning in his lines, the original Ubisoft title, 13. More recently, I've been playing Sable, which is another take on Mobius, the famous French graphic novelist. So Sable has been incredible for me. I've also been dipping and dallying into the, Left 4 Dead, Back 4 Blood, and a bunch of the games on our platform, like not Every Day the Same Dream. Through the Fragmentation, which is another awesome game. Through the Fragmentation on our platform, they look like people is another sort of Kubrick styled game from an awesome developer called Aaron Wise. They look like people is like a surrealist horror, sort of you're playing a Kubrick movie. It's Polaris meets The Shining. It's awesome. So I've been dipping my toes into, and like Ian said, Metroid Dread is game of the year for last year. That's been, my go-to. I'm a dad of a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old. So I got to dip and play the Switch like while I'm on the toilet. Like I got to get past this robot. I hope I don't get, and then when I get, bagged, I get out. And my wife is like, you're taking too much time in the bathroom. So those stylings of game. So it's a cornucopia of a grab bag of titles that I've learned from my experience working with these large publishing houses and developing games on my own with other creatives to take the best ideas and feedback and try and generate like a schmutz or a smorgasbord of a game that somebody will enjoy. That's what I think people really enjoy, those out-of-the-box games like Fez and all of these other games, because they weren't really they're presenting things that people are used to, but it's presented in a different way. Now those creators end up doing other things and their creations end up eating them, but we're trying to expand on the scope of these individual pieces of artwork that can be expanded upon in different IP and in graphic form and graphic novel form, anime form. So we want to expand on that as well.
Mm-hmm. You kind of built on this a little bit earlier, but do you think that things like Steam, mobile games, and PC games offer more diversity of content and game type than console games?
Okay. Yes, in the sense that you're literally going to have a diversity of games on the platform. Mm-hmm. But in terms of promoting them, no. The way Steam Featured works is SEO based. If you are a small indie dev, you're not going to get on the board with Steam. And I mean, there's some other hurdles too. So for example, the Steamworks wrapper doesn't work with games that have external dependencies. So if you built your game in something like Unity, you would have to link through various other Steamworks features like achievements and multiplayer, which can be pretty tough if you're like a solo dev, right? So I think Steam does very little to help small developers. I think there is a very big unserved gap there. I don't think it's like malicious, right? Like they're not going out of their way to snipe smaller developers. It's just a reality of the platform. They have tools that you need that need extra accommodations that might hurt small teams, and they have a featured system that doesn't really benefit small developers. I guess that's all it comes down to.
I think
did he freeze for anybody else or no?
Yeah, he froze for me. I'll hit him up on Discord. I don't know what's going on. Ian, did you want to take the conversation over?
Yeah, sure. See, you're asking if there's more diversity on kind of mobile and Steam than console. I mean, yeah, by very definition, yes. I mean,
Yes.
the consoles are such, you know, strictly controlled stores. You have to jump through so many hoops in terms of the testing requirements and everything else that whilst it's incredibly difficult to get noticed on with a mobile game or on Steam, yeah, and you can get something out there. I mean, Itch is a great example of, you know, diversity in games as well. Just the stuff that's on there is just there's so many hidden gems, and you know, and unfortunately, you know, making a good game is not what is going to make you successful. You have to have a marketing plan, and you know, build an audience for it, and you know, and hopefully, if you keep doing it and keep trying it, you'll get some breaks, you'll get lucky, and you'll be in a position to be able to capitalize on them and keep growing it and keep doing more things.
Yeah, that's precisely what VoxPop is trying to do. We're trying, like, we know that there's games that have been on itch that have come to VoxPop with more expanded content that we're helping to market and helping them to expand their market space. So it's cool to find like the hidden gems, but it's also that you got to publicize these hidden gems. Everyone doesn't recall that Among Us was a failure for 3 years on Steam because it was just buried. It wasn't seen anywhere until a bunch of YouTubers and influencers and content creators started promoting it on their streams, and it became this sort of global phenomenon. Everyone is, it's a verb like Google, you know. Among Us is like Google now. It's like one of those verb things. So or like a underground meme verb. But what we're trying to do, honestly, with the platform is, like I said, enhance the voice, enhance the notoriety. Make sure that the content creators are getting something for their time, not just the game code. They're actually expanding and building their community, expanding on their, I guess, net reach, and the widening their net of perspective, and letting people know that they're playing quality style games that are being created by amazing developers that might have that sort of hidden gem that becomes the next big thing and becomes that next sort of game loop or game feature that ends up being in a AAA game that people can go back to and say, oh, well, this was found on this platform. I played this styling of game years ago on VoxPop. That's what we're trying to accomplish here.
Awesome. So I guess moving towards this next year, is there anything that you're allowed to tell us about what you're looking forward to game-wise, and also what can we expect from VoxPop in this coming year, and what can we expect from FLICK SOLITAIRE in this coming year?
We've got a lot of great games coming up very soon. So one of our games, Weaponeer, is a very cool sort of Sonic Spinball style 2D game. It's designed to be played with only one input access, and 50% of its revenue is going to able gamers, actually. There's Game Informer is going to be running a story on the Weaponeer able gamers connection very soon. But Weaponeer comes out February 14th. But a game that we have that's perhaps a little more relevant to the comic book manga style of SaturdayCon is a game that's coming up called Ultimate Reality. It's a game about a superhero who invents a device that allows them to travel through dimensions, and it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you use these dimensional powers to advance.
I wanted to go as well, but I don't know if Ian had any updates.
Yeah, I want to play those. Let me know what I can.
Well, just sign up to the platform, man. It's free. Everyone signs up, so we'll send you the links are all in our socials.
Yeah, I'll do that for sure. More Solitaire, commissioning more artists. We've just signed up a couple of new ones. More diverse artists as well. Always looking for good people. So if you're a great artist, got a good portfolio, get in touch with us. New game modes, expanding the team. As a small company, it's mostly been two of us working full time. So we're getting raising a bit of funding at the moment to grow the team, start marketing it a bit more aggressively, and because mobile is you have to be able to market it to be able to survive on mobile. But if you can get to the top, it's pretty. It can be pretty good. Sorry, go on.
No, if you have a PC spec and you want to bring it to the platform, it's free to onboard as well. We would love to see the PC version of FLICK Solitaire on the VoxPop platform. Another game that I wanted to focus on that was high key on my mind was Ninja Naboken. It's a indie reimagining of Ninja Gaiden for the NES. It has fatalities. It has a whole bunch of different crazy stuff. Super difficult. It's from a dev out of Mexico City, Gabriel Lopez. You please. So if anyone wants to check that out, it's available for wish listing on the Coming Soon page on our platform. Please support the devs. He's also coming out with another game called Chain Runners Liquid. That's sort of like a take on Road Rash, a new take on Road Rash. So there's a lot of games that are being developed from Latin American devs, African American devs. So we have a worldwide sort of net and expansion. I could go on about all the cool games that we have, but check them out on the platform. Go to voxpopgames.com or just Google the term VoxPop together, one word, games, and check us out.
I'm super excited for all of that. I have to contain myself. I feel like I have professionalism that I have to keep as the moderator, but I do want to know more about that anime, comic, manga game after the panel.
Yeah. No worries, man.
It looks so dope except for the logo.
Yeah.
The logo is unreadable. But everything else about the game looks amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now I think we'll start taking some questions from the chat. This question says, how do you feel about free assets being used by indie companies in comparison to bigger companies who have larger budgets?
Well, okay. So in terms of free assets, they get a bad rap from the players because they're often associated with these sort of like content dump games where they just do asset swaps on certain objects in the game and they try to resell it. But I think these sorts of free assets are a very good tool for developers who are first learning. And when it comes to art style, right, people fixate so much on polygons and textures and all these things. You can make a very good looking low poly game if you're smart about how you use your assets and you have an actual art direction in mind, right? So there's no reason why a great game can't be made with free assets, but I think as long as that stigma exists, and it's going to be a little tougher to market a game that's being made entirely with free assets. Bit of a rambling answer. I'm sorry.
We always need another Flappy Bird clone or something like that, but no. A lot of the times it's looked down upon in the indie scene because you end up being like Charles said, a swap or a clone. It's not really too prevalent in the larger PC space because people will shout you out like, "Hey man, you stole all my assets," or "You just bought this from the Unity store or the Epic, asset store and just are skinning things." But I think if you're able to tread the line between non-IP infringement or blatant just cloning of assets, you might be able to. I mean, AAA studios do it all the time. They have to clone a bunch of assets for things, so it's not uncommon in the indie space because you're strapped for budget. But it's not. I don't want to say it's looked down upon. I think in my best effort, I would like to give advice, and the advice is try and make it your own. Try and make it unique. Try and expand on it.
Or even just like actually buy assets from people who do that, sell those professionally, right? Everyone knows what the free Unity store assets look like because they're in a million things.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're strapped for budget, you don't have a 3D artist, right? You could buy asset packages from artists on the internet, and they will sell you the rights to use those assets too. And those assets might not be the greatest assets in the universe, but they will be less recognizable by people, right? And you won't get a lot of, I don't know if there's a less pretentious way to say it, the negative brand perception.
Jesus Christ.
You know what I mean, right? You a YouTube cringe compilation where they're like, look at this shitty game.
There's a place for it for free assets, right? There's, you know, if you're a developer who's like learning to code, you know, you just need some assets to put in the game to make something.
Yeah,
you know,
prototyping, making a vertical slice. You can swap
as an artist, you know, releasing stuff for free can get you attention, can get people coming to you because they want more of your work because they've seen the free stuff. So there's definitely a place for it.
Somebody pull up the next question.
Uh-oh.
There it is. How has your experience with game design influenced your view of games other than your own?
Sometimes it gets hard to enjoy games without deconstructing them. But I don't know. You usually you can. And as I was saying earlier, for me it's I'm always looking for new experiences, things I haven't played before. You know.
I found that more and more I've grown to value games that are mechanically interesting, that I maybe wouldn't necessarily enjoy on their own. So the perfect example of that is Baba Is You. Great game, amazing puzzle game. I'm going to be honest, I mostly love it because of how the mechanics work and not because of the actual user experience of playing it. But it's so clever, using language as a core puzzle mechanic. I love that. Consequently, there are games that I absolutely loved for their narrative and presentation that I hate for their mechanics now, and more I find them hard to go back to. Well, the perfect example of that would be Thomas Was Alone. Thomas Is Alone is this sort of narrative puzzle platformer where you control various squares, right? And each of the squares have different properties for solving these puzzles. The narration's great, the story's fantastic, the soundtrack is amazing, but the user experience is awful, especially when you get to the end game and one of the characters is 9 different cubes. So you have 9 tiny cubes that you have to individually control and maneuver into various spots just to solve any given puzzle. And so there are things like that where even in games that I previously loved, I can't help but ask, why did you design it this way? This is nonsense.
My answer is to mimic pattern over what Ian had said. I started my career in game and analyst role, which encompassed production design and most importantly, quality assurance for games. So when I play games, I hate games that I know are overtly buggy because I felt like I have to fill out a bug report for the company. So it's like I make it a point to try and find games that are super polished, whether they're in indie space or AAA space. Most of the time, the AAA games are not. I mean, there's only so much you could do throwing man hours at a game that's over budget by $13 million, and they're not putting all that budget into QA. They're putting that budget into marketing, or they're putting it into designing the sweat that falls from Nathan Drake's face. So what I'm trying to get at is I view, as a game just analyst, designer, whatever, I fall into the trap and the sort of pattern of quality assurance for the titles. It's a hard habit to kick, but it happens to me a lot. It happens to a lot of people a lot. It doesn't make me overtly critical of games that are sort of shitty because I love meme style games that are crazy and are broken. That's also a cool thing, but you have to go in. You're not going into, Call of Duty Blops thinking that it's going to be a pile of dog shit, but sometimes it ends up being that way in certain instances, and you can't do anything about it. So that's the differential here is I find myself in that sort of feedback loop of QAing the game rather than enjoying the narrative journey. So I like to have my experience of more soul gaming have that sort of true truffle of a gameplay experience.
Mark,
I think also as a game designer, you learn so much from bad games as well, and things that you don't like. You can learn a lot from those as well.
Yeah. Charles, you're going to say something? Sorry.
I was going to say, as an Elder Scrolls fan, what you said offends me.
Stop it. Stop with the Elder Scrolls. Everybody's still playing that, and they're hurting themselves while playing that. It's a detriment to your health.
Next question says, how would you describe an average day of work? I think we kind of
we covered
this one a little bit.
We covered
next question. Artie Draws asks, honestly, a good game with good art is really a blessing. Have you guys ever played Persona 5? It's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, did we ever disagree with that? A good game with good art is great.
I played every Persona. I've only gotten halfway through every Persona. I only play them because of the art, but I can't complete them. I'm completionist for everything else. Like, I'm one of the rare dudes that got like the Half-Life 2 achievement of putting the gnome in the rocket ship. So I am a completionist at heart, but the Persona games I've never been able to it's like a lot of filler, anime style. So I've never been able to complete a Persona game, but I've played all of them.
Yeah, I'm a big JRPG fan. Persona 5 was the first Persona game that I've tried. Unfortunately, I bailed probably after about 5 hours. I'm sorry to say, but it does look absolutely incredible. It looks incredible.
If your guys are Shin Megami Tensei fans, you should play Devil Survivor.
That is so good. Yes, I had to break character for a second. Had to break character.
Yeah,
got him.
Yeah.
Dragon Quest 11. That was amazing. I played that for so long.
Next question says, what kind of work ethic do you think people should have in order to grow and improve?
I think more important than anything is to have a certain degree of self-compassion. I don't know how many other people fall into this trap, but I remember every tiny failing I've ever had over the course of my life. I have a hard time looking at my old work without cringing. But that's a very counterproductive attitude. Being overly critical sometimes will hurt you when it comes to finding the places where you can genuinely improve. And being unable to look back on your old work is anathema to improving in your future work, right? So I don't know if this directly answers the question of work ethic, but I think that a lot of people who make things, they have a tendency to be overly critical of their own work, and this prevents genuine introspection.
I want go ahead, Ian.
But being too critical of your own work as well can stop you releasing things and getting stuff out there. And you're going to learn so much more if you are not afraid to fail, or you accept that, through mistakes and through imperfections and just getting stuff out there, that you're going to learn faster and iterate quicker and become better quicker. Also, I think it's important to be able to ask for and accept criticism and feedback, because it's, when you've poured your heart and soul into something, it's very easy for other people to criticize it, and sometimes they will just be wrong, but you need to listen to them and lightly pretend to acknowledge it and try and understand what they mean, and also from my point of view, as someone who's commissioned 30 artists in the last couple of years, it makes such a difference to the process and the relationship when you're working with an artist who can take feedback constructively, and it helps you make things better together.
I know I've been talking a lot throughout this panel, but I'd actually just like to offer a corollary to that. It's the other most important thing when it comes to criticism is being able to sort criticism based on which pieces of criticism you can realistically address. Sometimes the criticism is totally valid, but you just don't have the skill or the resources to actually address it. And that can be a very tough thing to accept. When you can just see the imperfection, and all you can do when everybody brings it up is just nod and say, I know, I wish I could, I can't, right? But you have to be able to prioritize. You can't sink a bunch of resources into addressing a relatively minor complaint that's very visible when there's something more serious that you could actually do something about, right? That sort of thing. It's a simplified example, but you know what I mean. Being able to realistically take stock of your own capabilities is important to being able to actually address this criticism. And I think that's part of the self-compassion that I was talking about earlier.
My mentality is unwavering, and it's more about something that we might be lacking in our contemporary times is having a thicker skin. Your work ethic has to exemplify being able to take all of these mentionings that Charles and Ian had mentioned about criticism, but also having a thick skin about things. We also like to talk about troll babies and all these craziness, like overtly rude, anonymity comments. But like I said, I said earlier, there is some truth to those criticisms and we can improve, but having the ability to distinguish between what is right, what is wrong, what is feasible, what is actionable is the thickness of skin. I don't know how else to place it. It's not being so triggered, not jumping into sort of cancel culture, just being as objective and not purely subjective as possible, trying to take your subjective opinions, but also have everyone's objective truth about things that you're commenting on be the reality of the situation and not just crafting reality from your subjectivity. So we need to sort of have a thicker, the work ethic, I guess, answer is working as hard as possible that you can, giving your all, and having as thick of a skin as possible, because the bumps in the road and the scars that you take dictate the map and stylings of your life and where you will be. Every anime, every manga has heroes that take bumps, they take crazy, death blows, and they come back 10 times stronger because they learn and they level up. If we don't have that, if we're reading about that and we're not instilling that in ourselves, it's a sort of Pyrrhic victory. We have to enable ourselves to engage ourselves mentally and being able to say, okay, I'm going to take all of this badness and turn it into as much of goodness in my lifestyle as possible. That's the work ethic that I live every day. I have a wife and kids, and I have to roll with the punches through criticisms every day, and we just got to grow with them.
It was very inspirational. Marc felt like he was leading us into a final boss battle. Now I'm very prepared now. Ricardo asks, what are your favorite genres in gaming? RPG, RTS, sports, FPS, etc.?
Well, for me personally, it's really evolved over time. But I quite like RPGs because I think a good narrative is sometimes a very good way forward. And it's very interesting to see how games iterate on the standard RPG formula. I also quite a big fan of puzzle games. Like I said, Baba Is You was a bit of a revelation for me.
Ian, you want to go? I'll go now. For me, it's the grab bag of things. At any given moment, I could love RTSs, FPSs, third persons, horror games, whatever. Yeah. My mains right now are, because of my son playing Halo, because there's no blood. Trying to get him into Minecraft, so giving him that first person perspective. He loves a shmup that's called Pixels Hollows Eve. It's a top-down shmup that we have, shmup, and weird dynamic games like Guardians of Ladino Forest or Prep School Horrors that are also on our platform that are sort of psychedelic journeys. You gotta, maybe burn one and play this game, and you'll go on some adventure that you didn't know where you could have. Guardians is one of those. So that's pretty much my sort of favorites. It's everything and anything that's interesting.
Yeah, as I said, I'm a sucker for JRPGs. That goes all the way back to playing Phantasy Star on the Sega Master System, and I spent I don't know 50, 60 hours playing that game as a kid. And I remember at the end of the game, the credits rolled, and just something clicked in my head, and I'm like, oh my god, all these people got paid to like make this incredible game, and that was it for me. And it was Yuji Naka was the lead programmer, I believe. And that's why I'm in the games industry today. But yeah, apart from falling into JRPGs, but I can't play them all year round. I play all kinds of stuff. A game that pretty defies categorization, I'd say, and I really enjoyed recently was a game called Unpacking, where it's beautiful pixel art. You have a room with boxes, and you're unpacking items and deciding where to put them in the room. And it's amazing how it tells a story of the items that your character's taking from place to place and what's happening in their life. It's just really, really creative with just something that's so simple.
Next question says, after working in game design, is there any prior games that make you wonder how their process went?
How their process went.
It's called Trigger Warning. I did play that weird game that got banned from the store, the Hater game. That weird
Hatred.
Yeah, the Hatred game. So I played that game for as much as you can possibly play that game, and it didn't really give me the aspect of anything aside from like a lame Postal clone or something that I played in the early 90s, like early Doom sets were way more hyper-violent, way more like transmittable to this is something I should not be playing. It's naughty. It's like it's something that's risque. So in playing that, I managed to figure out that even the beauty and the design and the hard work that they did to build that style, I think that there is some unique beauty in the artwork and the artistry of this hyper violent, insane, banned game. And I think I take that, I take that with me in everything that I do. Like, to critique something and ban something is sort of self-centering. It takes away from the artistry of anything and the communication dialogue that we can all have. So we're living in these crazy times that people don't want to say things. People don't want to say things. I never grew up on that. I grew up in the era where I'm analog and digital, that sort of Zennial era, where it's in between the dawn of the super internet now with all the social media and pre, VHS tapes, the micro SD, not the micro SD, the what the hell was that freaking device? Either way, I grew in that in-between space. So in that in-between space, having the design and acknowledging the artistry in every piece of playable format media is something that I think people need to take a step back from, because it's the last guarded, I guess, media that shouldn't be in this sort of self-censorship. It should be allowed to freeform, and then people make their own judgments. If we're going to say at the same point video games don't cause violence in society, then we should not be banning anything that creates that. It's the mental capacity of each individual and the choices that they make that causes all of this violence in the world. So banning or self-censoring is something that I try to stray away from, and also acknowledging the artistry in those games that are designed that way. They're designed that way for a reason. If you play Postal, you're going to be way more, triggered than anything that you play in that Hatred game. That's just me, my opinion.
So I have a nega answer, actually, if that would be okay. It's very rare that I play a game and I think, man, what were they thinking when they designed this? But I feel like when most gamers say stuff like that, they're referring to, especially nowadays, how games are monetized. They'll look at loot boxes and DLCs, and they'll go, what were they thinking when they chopped up their game like this? I would actually like to answer that real quick and risk becoming the bad guy in everyone's eyes. The answer is because of economics. The nominal price of a new retail game has not budged from $60 since 1982, I believe. Whereas, because of inflation, the real value of a video game, of a new retail game, has dropped by 70%. So now volume has kept up with inflation for the most part over the few years, but it's stalled out over like the last 5-6 years. So if games want to remain commercially viable, they either need to raise the retail price or they need to find alternative methods of of monetizing. And there have been multiple attempts to raise the retail price, and they have been all disastrous. Nobody wants to feel like their game is more expensive at purchase. And so as long as those two things are true, looking for alternate ways to monetize these games is just going to be a reality. So when you talk about making your game play to win, for example, pay to win, there is a push and pull here. You want your game to be playable enough that you have a steady supply of new people for the whales to crush. But paying needs to give some sort of tangible advantage, or the whales will stop paying, right? And so these sorts of economic push and pulls are created by, forces outside of games themselves. And that's why those, that kind of monetization exists. It won't in indie games, though, which have different economic drivers. So one more reason for you to support independent developers, right?
Yeah. Another sort of AAA real world example would be why Nintendo, anything first party, does not go down under $60. They have to maintain that overhead. So everyone could be upset about Nintendo, but you're never going to pay a Mario game that's less than $60. That's the story. I work with Capcom, and they do the same thing. All the Japanese developers are not going under because they would take a drastic hit in their revenue share, and they won't be able to make any other games for the singular platform. And so they're just now teetering with those additional packs for Smash Brothers and all this other stuff. But those things are, like Charles described, we're in a capitalistic world. It sucks, but they are part and parcel for the first party titles, at least for Nintendo. That's the realest world example I can give.
I think if anything, learning more about game design helps you appreciate what bad games were trying to do. It becomes very easy to see, okay, this was the design intention. I understand where it might have failed, right? Because of X, Y, Z. I think it's very rare that it gives you this they feel have a very negative opinion of a game that was already good. I don't know. Maybe somebody else disagrees with me on that.
Yeah, so the question was about the process of, do we think about the process? And then the first thing my mind jumps to is how were the staff treated? I think when Red Dead Redemption 2 was released, there was a lot of criticism around the studio culture and the hours that people worked on that game, and it not being healthy, and that's something that I hope we see more of, that there's more pressure on studios to do the right thing in terms of the working conditions, including not only in the studios, their internal studios, but also the outsourcing studios, and make sure that the staff are having good quality lives outside of their jobs. I mean, people like Charles and I dare say, don't work 40 hours a week. We work much more. Yeah. But we also benefit from that when we get the rewards when it's successful.
Having been one of those people that have worked on a Red Dead Returns or Red Dead Redemption, I know the toxicity of that culture that's working more than 120. I got married on vacation. I didn't have a break for 5.5 years. So my honeymoon was something that I needed to save up years for. I know that culture at VoxPop. We are anti all of those procedures of trying. We know that we are driving, Charles, like Ian said, we're all driving more than 80-hour work weeks, but it's a balance. It's a work-life balance. And because of COVID and the dawn of remote teaching and learning and remote work, it's making it more flexible, and it's making it more viable for companies like Google, Meta, Facebook, or whatever, to be able to have these sort of work-life balances and more healthy brainwave patterns from doing what they're doing in their homes and in their own space.
And I think this is our final question for today. Where do you see Flick Solitaire and VoxPop in a few years? I feel like we kind of already talked about that, but yeah, I guess what's your 5-10 year plan?
Well, I mean, Solitaire is the most played game ever. Microsoft Solitaire had 1 billion physical installs of that game, which is pretty incredible. But it's you know, it's often seen as a game for older, more mature players, let's say. And I think there's younger generations who haven't discovered like just how satisfying and how relaxing it is to play solitaire. So really, we want to bring solitaire to a new audience, and also, you know, again, making it about collection of beautiful art by independent artists, and you know, doing good with it as well. But yeah, hopefully we'll have one day in 5 years we'll have more downloads than Microsoft Solitaire. There you go.
The dream would be to make VoxPop the new hub for independent developers. Our pitch to devs is not, you know, we can make you rich, we can make you the next Notch, right? Our pitch is we can make it so that you can make a living plying your craft, that you don't need some other day job to support your side hustle of making independent games, that you can make these games for a living. We want to continue expanding in that direction. We want to keep adding new tools that will support indie devs and the influencers that they get on board with, right? So our bounty board system is something we're working on right now. We want to add new verticals that people can use, crowdfund-based, profit-sharing-based crowdfunding, we think is very promising. Profit-sharing-based contracting. So basically, the idea is that whoever backs you or whoever helps work on your game, they own now a percentage of your game. And anytime that game is sold, they get paid dividends based on the percentage that they own, right? Finally, internal development. Me and Marc, we have like 500,000 prototypes that we love to turn into actual games someday. Vertical slices as far as the eye can see. We would love to make internal development a part of VoxPop as well.
Charles hit it on the head. Everyone can grow with us and our journey by just signing up for free and setting our account. And it'll be like your ID will be the early ones when we see us at ID 5 million of installs. So go, Charles, go.
Speaking of, I have another secret for any aspiring indie devs out there. You don't have to be afraid of people stealing your ideas, because they all have thousands of their own ideas that they want to make.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to take yours.
Yeah, exactly.
We barely have enough time to make ours.
Well, Nas said it best, and it's a quote from the Bible: there's nothing new under the sun. So everything's being redone and rehashed and reworked. So what we have to do is have the next playable, oh, this is familiar to me game, the next Pac-Man, the next, like we said, the next Minecraft. But everyone could go check things out at VoxPopGames.com. Google VoxPop Games. The term is VoxPop, one word, VoxPopGames. Future in 5 years, we're still doing this. We're expanding on our verticals. We have some games that we wholly own that have exclusive content on our platform that people can enjoy and download for a fair price and help stream on their channels. And they also get a cut of the earnings because they're using our platform. So unlike other platforms, I don't want to be comparative, but we're offering tool sets that are available on no other platform. So it's familiar. It's something that's new. I know people are a little bit hesitant as early adopters. I'm an early adopter on everything myself. I'm getting the Steam Deck in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to see but I'm going to also load up the Steam Deck with VoxPop, see how it runs there. But yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll see what we do. Thank you, Mike, Ian, Charles. Thank you to everyone in the SaturdayCon and everyone on YouTube and everyone that joined the con. I appreciate the time, and thank you so much for having us. It's really honored. I'm honored to be a part of this. So I hope this becomes something that next year you see 1 year later with VoxPop. We'll check in 2023 with you guys.
For sure. And before we wrap things up, Ian, can you tell everyone where we could find Flick Solitaire?
On your mobile phone, go to the App Store, search Flick Solitaire, and when you do, you get to choose your starting deck for free. And of course, the Saturday AM deck is there available for you to pick. Yeah, go check it out. Hopefully, we'll be able to do more work with Saturday AM going forwards as well.